Hello, everyone. Welcome to Screaming Into the Void, episode number 14. I am here with my friend Teagan today. Say hello. Oh. Don't move.
Huh?
You're here. Don't move.
Okay, God, I'm not doing anything.
Okay. We're here with my friend Teagan today. Say hello.
Hi.
So, it's just me and her today. Unfortunately, Steve is not here because he's off doing Steve things. So it's just her today. She's military as well. She is supply. How long you been in for?
Coming up on 2 years in March.
Nice. Okay. So, without further ado, we're going to talk about most suicide in the Air Force and mostly just suicide in the military in general, because I guess it kind of covers all branches, but we're primarily talking about the Air Force today. So, do you want me to start or do you want to?
No, you start.
Okay. So, when I was thinking about this topic, I've been thinking about it a lot the past few days because it's been pushed a lot the past few days, past few weeks. I've been seeing it all over Facebook, Twitter, and whatnot, and like commands are cracking down on it. I think the biggest thing I've narrowed it down to, there's more obviously, but I've narrowed it down to, I would say, at least two major factors. There's probably more, but I have two major ones. So the first one is the generational gap between the junior enlisted and the seniors. So what I mean by that is the junior enlisted that make up the bulk of E1 to E6 and O1 to O5, primarily your juniors and a portion of the senior tiers, the way they were raised, the way they were brought up is primarily very different than those who are now sitting in these senior positions. With the way that we have progressed technology-wise in the past 20 to 30 years, this generation, mine definitely, millennials and Gen Z, Gen Y, whatever the one is that came after, it's the way they communicate and their values are entirely different than I would say that of the officer tier. And the stress that comes with social pressure, it's just different now than it was 20 to 30 years ago. And so is the military standing. So the people who are now making the rules are very out of touch with their generation right now, with the junior generation. They don't truly understand them. They don't understand how they face their issues, the pressures they face, and just how they were raised. There used to be a much different mentality back in the home of how you came up. Nowadays, it's just completely different. A lot of people were raised where, back in the day where you got 18, you got out, you got a job, it was whatever. A lot of people don't like leaving home right away. A lot of people want to stay and make money, get a career. It was very different, I would say. And that's the first reason. The second reason is pressure on the junior enlisted. So when you think about everything that encompasses the junior enlisted now as opposed to maybe, again, 20, 30 years ago, or even prior to that, you would not dream of seeing an E1 or an E4 sitting anything higher than their own slots. Right now, in my site alone, I've seen E4 sitting E7 slots. I'm in E5 sitting in E7 slot right now in two different positions, no less. And I'm literally going to be moving to a position where I write the training for some of the jobs for my site as an E5. Master sergeants up and above should be doing that, right? So when you think about how much pressure is on the juniors, it's because of the fact we're trying to do more with less. That old mentality that I've ripped apart in a video before. I don't like it at all. However, it has to happen because, again, people just aren't interested in the military now as they were so many years ago. People have a very odd sense of what they think the military does. And what I mean by that is, I've walked out in public in uniform before. I've been called a baby killer, serial rapist, believe it or not. I've been called a fascist. I've been called a whole lot of nonsense. It's amazing to me, but at the same time, I don't argue with these people. One, there's nothing to gain out of that. It's not going to get me anywhere. And it's amazing what people think we do. So not only do you have people disinterested in what the military does, you now have a generation that despises the military, people who are very patriotic, and the fact that through the younger generation, they're also now imposed on doing a whole lot more with a whole lot less. But those are primary things that I've noticed, and possibly a few others, but what was your opinion on it?
I agree. I think the generational gap is a big problem. So when I joined, my grandfather was in back in the day, and he gave me a completely different picture of what the Air Force actually was. So I went in thinking it was going to be very rigid, very disciplined, very, A, B, and C, whereas, basic training was just classes. Now, I think the Air Force culture is one of the most interesting things, if I'm putting it nicely.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a fine line, and it's such a huge gray area of what's acceptable and what's not. I've noticed, in my personal case, a lot of favoritism. Some people can get away with stuff, some people can't.
The good old boys club.
No, not just that. It's just, so like personally, as a female, I've never had, thankfully, I mean, I've never had any, sexist remarks said to me or being, discriminated against because I am a female. For me, it's a personality clash. I think that's a big thing too with this generational gap that you were talking about. Every generation before has had a war, and that really united people. That brought everybody to the military. People had pride in their country. They wanted to serve. They wanted to fight for something. Our generation, we don't have that yet. We don't have that one big thing really binding us together as brothers and sisters.
Not really.
For a lot of people, it's just a job. They get in, they do their school, they get out. They get in for 4 years, do their school, get out. So they don't have that team mentality. Whereas people who want to stay in for life, things like that, I think that is a big issue, is just coming together. Especially in my shop, everybody's pretty much out for themselves, and I'm guilty of that. Nobody has each other's backs, really.
There's not a lot of camaraderie.
There's not. A lot of people don't want to be there. A lot of people are miserable. I think.
And that's the thing I've noticed in comparison to like Air Force training and even like Marine training, but there's just no sense of camaraderie.
No, there's no brotherhood in the Air Force.
No, and the other thing
it's just a job. There's honor in being a Marine. That title means something. Being an airman doesn't have that same kind of stigma attached to it.
I mean, it has meaning, just not in the same sense. And the other problem too, and the other problem with it too, is you said that the rules are there's a fine line, and the problem is that the rules start and stop with whoever's at that time making them.
Exactly. There's no consistency. There's more hypocrisy from what I've noticed in my leadership. I've never really had problems at the officer level, more of just my senior enlisted.
But that's the thing. Go ahead.
I think, in my experience, you have one shot, and if they don't like you from that one time, no matter how much you change, no matter how much you work on yourself and improve on yourself, you're stuck in as that first impression, which I think you should be allowed to grow and have perspectives changed. But with these senior enlists, it's hard. It's really hard because their mentality is completely different than my mentality. I would run my shop completely different than my NCOIC does.
Oh, well, this is the funny thing, too, is that you bring up the fact that it's one and you're done. It's one shot, one kill. The problem is this. Back in the day, there was a point in the military you can get an Article 15 or 2, and you could bounce back from it. Now, impossible. Impossible. If you get an Article 15, your career is done. You'll be lucky to see the end of your contract. You likely won't. But there used to be a time when you could literally get an Article 15 or even 2 and still stay in the military. But now, not a chance. And the problem is this, too, is just that this is the thing, the higher in the chain you go, and I've noticed this, too, people think the rules apply to them less and less. Just even being a staff, like, I've noticed that I tested this. No bullshit, I tested this. There was a few days where as a staff, I went to work and I purposefully broke regs. I purposefully did it. And no one called me on shit. So I didn't shave. My hair was incredibly long. No one said a damn thing. But the hypocrisy lies with this. I called some airmen on it for being worse than me, and people agreed with me, but not them.
Yeah. I think that's the other thing too. They don't look they always want to say, oh, it's all about the people. It's all about the people. You can't have the mission without the people. But when it really comes down to it, they look at how many stripes you have on your shoulder or your chest, and that's what they see you as. They don't see you. You can be 18 and A1C and be the smartest person in the room.
Oh, it's entirely possible.
They don't see that. They see it as you have 2 stripes, you know nothing.
Well, there's been a lot of times.
All your ideas are wrong.
Yeah, there's been a lot of times where I've gone head-to-head with officers before. Like, as an A1C, I literally advised captains and up about decisions because they didn't know what they were talking about or the legalities of the situation they were talking about. And one of them asked me to, can we do this? But I can't really say, but can we do this particular thing? And I said, no, that's illegal. I will not do it. And he's like, are you refusing the orders of an officer? And I said, yes, I am. I straight up am. You're asking me to do something illegal, and I will not do it. And he's like, okay, we'll see about that. So I shouldn't have insulted him, but I kind of called him effing idiot. Because if you understood what he was getting me to do, you completely agree with why I called him that.
No, I know. I just think in any case, it's I don't know. It's funny.
It wasn't acceptable at the time, but I was still an A1C. And that's the thing, is just that there's been so many times where I was passed up because of my rank. So there was one time where I advised a lieutenant or a captain on a situation, and I gave him my opinion. And he says, okay, now I'm going to go ask somebody else for a second opinion. Or I'm going to go ask the staff sergeant just to be sure. And that happened to me so many times. Yeah. And the amount of times where the answer was the exact thing I just said.
Yeah, so I kind of had a similar situation. So I, as an A1C, I go and I brief colonels and lieutenants, master sergeants, senior master sergeants every single day. I walk in there as an A1C. The lowest rank at that table is a technical sergeant, right? And then I got put up for, and I do, everything else. I got put up for airman of the quarter, but I lost because I'm an A1C to a senior airman who does half of what I do, just because I'm an A1C. The last two people of one airman of the quarter are senior airmen. And I know for a fact I did more in that quarter than that. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but looking at it statistically, based off of, who did what, I could easily say that I did more. But yet he won it just because he's a senior airman. And I think it's ridiculous. I think lower enlisted are looked over. Their ideas are pushed aside just because, it's not coming from, just because I don't have 4 stripes. I think it's kind of ridiculous. I understand the rank structure is there for a reason, but at the same time, if you have a good idea, it shouldn't be ignored just because of how many stripes are on your shoulder.
Well, I mean, I know I've talked about this in either in a podcast or a video before, or even on stream numerous times. There's never been a point in the military where the enlisted are expected to be as educated as they currently are. You are expected to get your CCAF at some point. You're expected to have a degree just to make master sergeant. Which has never been a thing ever prior. Might I remind everybody here. So the fact that nowadays people are coming in to be enlisted members, sometimes having associates, bachelors, and freaking masters because they don't want to be officers. The point is, I met an A1C who had a master's or a doctorate in something. I'm like, why don't you become an officer? He's like, it's too political. I can't do it. I'm like, fair enough. But and then they were talking about his profession, and then he was disagreeing with a bunch of staffs and techs, and maybe I think a captain. I think he had a doctorate. I think it was I forget what it was. I think it was something medicinal. Mm-hmm. And he was like, no, that's not how any of this works. He's like, oh yeah, how would you know? You're just an A1C. He's like, I have a doctorate, you idiot. He's like, this is what my degree is in. I know you're wrong. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's never really been a point in the military's history, in opposed to now, where enlisted are expected to be as educated as they are. So there's been airmen that have come in with great ideas because, unfortunately, people really get too complacent, I feel, at times. And then there's also the sense of needlessly changing things. And one of the things that I hate about the Air Force now is the way we do EPRs and OPRs. There is too much incentive to change things needlessly for the sake of bullets. Mm-hmm. I cannot even begin to describe the amount of damn times my office has been rearranged for the sake of a bullet.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. I can't even handle it. Because when I came back from my quote-unquote deployment, we're like, oh yeah, we reorganized. And then they did it again when I was gone for 3 weeks, and they did it again. So now literally the joke is no one knows what anybody else does because they renamed everything so many times. It's like, why do we do this? Oh, wait, I know why. Someone needed an OPR bullet. Mm-hmm. There is too much incentive to change things and or take credit for them purely for the sake of your own progression. So
I think things like that are a cop-out, in my opinion. I think nobody really wants to put in the work to make decent change that will actually help people. They want to do something very minimal, but get all the credit for it and get a reward for it. Just because they didn't really do anything. I could go in and I can rearrange my job. It's not like it takes any effort, but for an officer to do that and get, an amazing bull out of it, I think it's ridiculous.
Because whenever you do over said law, led, did, whatever, theirs will just be oversaw, managed, whatever. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, is just that the way that the promotion system is set up, it demands that people be not necessarily backstabbers, but it's too competitive. When I joined, I thought promotion was based purely on performance. If you are good at what you did, eventually you made stripes, right? Eventually, I thought that's how it worked. And then I joined. I'm like, wait, we do packages and paperboard and all this other kind of crap. I'm like, this is really how we promote? This is stupid.
Yeah. So I found out the same thing. I had a very old school idea of the military from my grandfather, and
Same here.
How I was told it's it's all about your performance. You work hard, you get rewarded for it. But now, as I've experienced, I haven't had an EPR yet because they changed the time frame when I came in.
Yeah, you're not going to have one until you're a senior.
Yeah, I know. But just based off of the things that I've seen in the like awards, I think promotions nowadays, and this is my personal opinion, they're based on favoritism, because you can have somebody that, you can have a supervisor and have two troops, one troop they really like, so they're going to spend more time making better bullets, writing better bullets for them because they like that individual and giving them a 4 or a 5, versus that other individual that they don't like could have actually better work, better bullets, but get a 3 or a 4 and have terribly written bullets just because the supervisor doesn't like them. Like, my supervisor told me he was like, there's nobody that could change your EPR but me. So if he doesn't like me...
That's not true.
I know. There's a lot of things that he says that I don't agree with. Anyway, and
he's lying to you straight up in that point.
Yeah, I know. And the way I see that is like, okay, so if he doesn't like me, I'm screwed, because I'm not going to get, a 5, even though I do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever.
Well, okay, so, I mean, I agree with you, but I'll tell you one thing. Getting a 5 is not necessarily impossible, but the commander can only usually give out 1 or 2 at most, depending on how big your squadron is. So that you...
it as an example.
Right, getting a 4 is a bit more reasonable, because my EPRs have gone like this: 5, 4, and 5.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, 2 of them weren't rateable at the time, because I still had... Before we switched over to we got rid of the 18-month A1C EPR, I had one before they got rid of it, so that one was a quote-unquote 5. Then my first rateable one for my one for Staff Sergeant was a 4. Then my last one was not rateable because I couldn't promote because I had a line number for Staff was a 5. Right? Mm-hmm. But again, it doesn't actually count because, well, I mean, it does and it doesn't. It counts for my historical records, but it doesn't count for promotion points.
Well, and the weird thing is like, one of my very good friends from a different flight, same squadron and everything, he's got a Firewall 5, and he doesn't do school, he doesn't volunteer, he doesn't lead anything. He's a senior airman, he tests for staff, but he gets Firewall 5 just because he's the best one in his flight, not because of his actual merits. And that's what I have an issue with. Like, just because, other people in your flight, may be crappy, if you still don't do anything, you don't deserve a 5. Yeah,
that's the unfortunate reality of it, too. One thing to keep in mind, though, and that I don't know what your supervisor has told you, but technically speaking, your EPR is going to go through a lot of revisions before it gets signed off.
Oh,
so
I know.
It'll usually go to your section NCOIC, and then your flight NCOIC, your flight chief, and then it'll go to your first sergeant, and then if it somehow gets past them on the first try, which I guarantee it will not, it'll then go to the commander for final approval. So it does see a lot of revisions. But the problem is your supervisor's initial inspection does carry some weight. So them being a cock about it and then basically saying that their opinion is definitive, he's not being 100% honest, but he also isn't entirely lying. It's kind of it's weird. It depends on how much those following individuals actually care about his or her opinion. And
that's what I have an issue with. It's too personal. It should be based strictly on merit. It should be based on the work you put in, the time, in whatever, in volunteering, school, your actual job. It should be based off of that, not a personal opinion on an individual. But I mean, that's the way I see it. I don't know how well that would work. To me, that makes the most sense. It should be based off of pure merit, not because they like me or they don't like me or we're friends or we're not friends. Like, right. Yeah, I could have a crappy personality, but if I work and if I'm outperforming everybody on the flight, then I should get it based off of what I do, not because they don't like me as Teagan as a person. It should be, me as an airman.
It matters and it doesn't. So keep in mind, now there are some people, while they may be good workers, their personality are people that just shouldn't be staffs, because as a staff and higher, you need to have a certain type of personal mentality.
I see where you're coming from. There's a lot of staffs I've run into that are not leaders, who should not be supervisors, who... Right. I agree, and that's what I'm saying. That's why the Air Force culture is so tricky, because how do you find that balance? How do you find what rating system? How do you evaluate if somebody, is going to be a good leader or not? Because a leader is different than a manager.
Right, and all goes back to the personal mentality. And I think what it goes back to before that is just the way that we're brought up, no camaraderie. So when you
Yep.
think about it, what would make someone more invested in their people is if they actually cared about anybody else. But the way the Air Force promotes its people, and then the way it actually decides to handle people who don't meet their performance, it's cutthroat essentially. It's you either care because the best NCOs I've seen are people who never get awards.
Yep.
They're not.
So that was my best supervisor. He knew how to talk to me as an individual. He knew what I needed, but he wasn't very well liked as an NCO in the flight. He never got awards. He never got this, or that, unless he went on a deployment and got a decoration, things like that. But you come back to the squadron, and he's one of those NCOs where he's like, leadership brushes him off because they don't like him.
And that's the thing too is that, and then a lot of supervisors are very by the books or too AFI. So one of the worst commanders I've ever run into was so unapproachable and it was so by the books to the point where it was nauseating. And the problem is everyone's like, well, it's the AFI, so it's automatically right. I said, no, there's the AFI, then there's humanity on the other side of it. Just like Catholicism, if you follow the book to the letter, you're not going to be a human being at that point. It's the same with the AFIs. There's a level of humanity in there somewhere.
There has to be, and I think that that can also play into the whole suicide thing.
Well, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for example, I'm not going to give out situations or individual names, but one of the things that I pride myself on is being an NCO who genuinely cares about his people, and I very much do. I'm willing to sit down. I want to talk with you. I tell them, and this is straight up. I said, I want to be more than just someone who writes on you. I want to be more than just a name on an email. I want to be your friend. I'm only going to give you crap when you deserve it. That's basically it. I want to be your friend. I want to know you. And one of the things that I always appreciated so much was my old supervisor, who's a staff now, we're really good friends, is that I was able to treat him the way I would be able to treat anybody else. We would curse at each other. We'd yell at each other. We gave each other endless crap. But we worked well together. He knew who I was. He knew what I liked. He had my best interests at heart. And he didn't get awards, obviously, like I said. But he genuinely cared.
So that's how my last. I have had two supervisors like that, and that's where I thrived, because I could go to that individual and I could, they knew me as a person on a personal level, to where they didn't, they knew why I was the way that I was, and it caused a lot less issues because I didn't have to, work so hard and be so mentally stressed out about being the airman that leadership wants to see. I could be myself to a certain extent. I don't know if I'm explaining this right. I'm terrible at explaining things. But I get what you're saying. You have to, that individual and I had many, many personal talks to where we were on the same page as human beings, and then as supervisor and subordinate.
Right. There's the line here. So because of the fact that I was incredibly hands off for all my supervisors, like I tell all new airmen this: if you want to make your supervisor happy and then get them to want to invest in you, because it's give and take, right? Granted, the supervisor is supposed to do more of the giving because that's their role as a supervisor. However, there is a manner of give and take. If you want to be a good troop for your supervisor, the best thing I tell everyone is be accountable for yourself. If you mess up, let them know. If you're struggling, let them know. My biggest pet peeve as a staff is whenever there's a problem and my troops tell my section NCOIC or my flight chief, but they don't tell me.
Yeah, you should always let, it should just be a mutual respect between individuals. Like, hey, this is what happened, whatever. So I had an issue where I had to go to, the inspector general about it, and I let my supervisor know. As soon as I came back, I was like, hey, by the way, just so you know, I went to IG, blah, 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 blah. But the weird thing is I told him, he was like, no, you went to the bathroom. And I was like, what? He didn't not acknowledge it. He didn't, talk to me about it or anything. He just completely brushed it off like it wasn't anything. But I still let him know. I was like, just letting you know, if you, so you're not, completely blindsided. I did this and this happened, so I went to IG, whatever. I think that's how you gain trust and respect between people, is, letting them know, not everything. I don't think you have to let them know everything, but just enough to where you feel like they need to be involved. Or if it involves them, let them know.
So it's not necessarily odd, but it's actually, when you put on staff, you'll realize this. As a staff, you have not a lot of leeway, but you have a lot you can do for your troops if you want to be, as my buddy calls it, up in their Kool-Aid. What he mean by that is that if you know someone's struggling or has problems, you have not necessarily the right, but the ability to not necessarily be up in their business, but essentially be there as much as necessary. But again, that causes not necessarily the suicide problem, but the micromanaging problem, right? No one likes being micromanaged. But the best thing to do whenever you're a troop for anyone, because obviously I still have a supervisor, is just being accountable for yourself, letting them know what's going on, and then just having the decent attitude to admit your mistakes. One thing that I didn't like for some airmen, that anytime they messed up, it was somebody else's fault or someone else failed, to do their job. It's like, no, take responsibility for yourself, because what people don't realize, especially younger airmen, is that when they make excuses, a lot of NCOs can see through it. Because they know the process and because they know how things are supposed to go, when you lie to them or you try to word your way around it, they know you're lying to them.
Yeah.
So your best bet is to just never do that. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, too, is just that a lot of NCOs, especially me, don't like being treated like walking rank. And what I mean by that is just, when I put on staff, there was a lot of the people were acting weirder around me and other airmen were acting weirder around me. It's like, don't do that to me. I'm just a person. I'm not saying don't respect my rank. I'm just saying, like, I don't really put much weight behind it. I'm not saying I don't care, but I want to be approachable.
That's an issue I've run into too. You have those staffs and those supervisors who like that, but then it gets it can get very messy very quickly.
Well, the ones that are all about their rank or ones that don't care?
Both. I think when you have those people who are like, hey, like, yeah, I have rank, but I'm not too strict about it. I don't know. I guess my shop is just the most toxic place I've ever been in my entire life. So this might just be my experience. Sorry. Okay. So I think that can lead to issues to where, you're too lenient, because I don't know. It just goes back to the gray area of the Air Force culture where it's so back and forth. And it's hard to find that balance to where you respect the rank, but you're not unapproachable.
Not necessarily. I would say that's not necessarily the Air Force culture. That's more or less a supervisory fail of not setting the standards, which is what your supervisor is supposed to do.
Well, supposed to, but that's the thing. There's a lot of things that supervisors are supposed to do that they don't. There's a lot of things that senior NCOs are supposed to do, but they don't. And I think that is the Air Force culture. From everything that I have experienced, from different squadron leadership, from different flight leadership, it really plays into the whole the Air Force culture as a whole, because they're a part of it, and they pass that on to their subordinates, and then so on and so forth. So it's just a revolving door.
But wouldn't you almost say that because of the fact that usually, like, and even I can tell you this, that a lot of senior NCOs and higher officers, because of the fact that we're trying to do the whole more with less thing, that the reason they skimp on some of those other supervisory things is because maybe they'd argue they have other things to do? And I'm not saying that's an excuse. However, it's just you'd be really surprised that the more rank you get, all of a sudden, though, a lot more you have to do.
Well, no, I understand that concept. That's not what I'm trying to argue about. I'm not, but I think standards need to be standards for everybody.
Oh, well, yeah, of course. I mean,
you can't pick and choose. You can't be more friendly with one troop than you are with another.
Oh, yeah, of course not. That's never acceptable. That's the thing, though, is just that, unfortunately, when it comes to the waxing in standards and leniency, it all goes back to just the fact that, you and I both kind of, I think, had a different mentality of the military before we joined, where you and I both kind of pictured it as a very rigid, stiff place where I didn't think I'd have any free time. I didn't think I'd ever be able to do or have a personality of any real kind. And then I actually joined, and after like a year, I'm like, this is weird. This is not at all what I was expecting. In some instances, it's a good thing. In others, it's not.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had the same kind of thing. It kind of blew my mind when I got to my station. It wasn't, like super A, B, and C, 1, 2, 3. It was so. But then, and I think that's hard too. Personality clashes, because that's the biggest issue I've run into. as an airman is, I have a certain type, I have a very big personality, I have a certain type of personality that, not everybody agrees with, and then I get judged more on my personality than I do on my work.
Well, that's the other thing too, is just that people get mentalities of people, unfortunately, very quickly. And that's why you have to be very careful with who you talk to and what you trust people with, especially supervisory, because the minute you tell someone something in confidence, you'd be surprised how quickly they can be used against you, unfortunately, as it is. And that's why I've been very careful with who I tell what to, because, I've heard stories of people who have struggled or have personal, not necessarily ideals, but just personal things that are not even bad, just not, normal or completely accepted, and not even political, just, different kind of things that they do. Mm-hmm. And they tell someone, and then the reason that that person gets passed up for stuff is because, they're weird, so we're not going to promote them, or they're weird, so we're not going to give them that assignment, or whatever.
I've had the same issue because I'm very, I've learned to be flexible, and I'm also very rigid on certain ethics and certain views on things, and I don't think that's necessarily an issue, as long as the mission still gets done, in my opinion. But at the same time, I get judged, and I get passed over for things because of my personality, because I'm not really too into, and this is just me personally, I'm not really too into the whole Wingman Day thing, and so I get judged because they think that I'm negative and that I'm mean, and it's not that. It's just, for me personally, I would rather be at work, not playing tug of war with people that I don't necessarily care for, and so I get looked down upon for that when I don't necessarily think I should be, because I may have, you could say that just because I'm pessimistic about a few things or cynical on a few things, it has never affected the quality nor the quantity of my work.
Well, that's the thing, is that a lot of people would argue that it's all about that whole team mentality, right? That's what they would say. And my thing is, I never go to squadron events, I never go to crew events unless it's for someone I genuinely care for, because ultimately it's I can tolerate people at work, but on my off time, not saying I don't want to be around you people, I guess that is what I'm saying.
No, I'm the same exact way. I go to work, I'm there to work.
Yeah.
Friends come second. I'm there to further my career, to reach my goals, and it's not, I'm not going to be rude to anybody, and I feel like I'm approachable, I'm I'm a nice person, I think, I don't know. I get along with people. But when it comes down to it, I don't care about hanging out with you on the weekend. I care about, how is this going to affect the next stage of my career? How is this going to get me to where I want to be? Because ultimately, that's what's going to be there for me, not necessarily people at this base. I think friends are important. I think it's, I'm not saying don't have friends. I have friends, but at the same time, I don't spend too much time focused on an individual. I spend time focused on my career, and that may be selfish of me. However, my experience in the past, I've been there for myself more than anybody else has. Nobody will care about your career as much as you do.
And you'll hear that all the time.
I know. I've had it beaten into me. So that's why I take on that mentality of work first.
Well, that's how it's
second.
Well, that's how it's supposed to be.
In my opinion, that's how it should be. It should be mission first. It should be about the numbers. It should be about, this, and this. Not necessarily if you want to, go to Wingman Day. Just because I don't want to go to Wingman Day doesn't mean I'm not, a friendly person. I just prefer to be at work. I think you learn teamwork at work, not just sitting around hanging out.
I was reading a post when we were talking about the suicide thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That unfortunately kind of goes back in kind of like that revolving door you mentioned. That when you think of these forced morale days, these runs, these all this other kind of crap that people have to do, and it's totally. When I'm you recognize morale is low, right? So what you plan on doing is waking everybody up at 4 a.m, some with kids, to go for a run, while the work isn't getting done, only to have to pick up the slack later that you will inevitably give people crap for because the work isn't done. And that's the problem, is just that it goes in tandem with the whole doing more with less. So now when people are forced to be at these morale days and work isn't getting done, guess what? Work still needs to get done, but no one's there to do it.
Exactly.
And
no, I completely agree. I think forced morale events
They
do
do the exact
opposite of what they're
opposite, yeah.
supposed to do.
Oh yeah, they do. Because the thing is, everyone can tell it's a reactive approach. You're only reacting this way.
That's what it is. You know what? I said the same thing when I was in it. We were in the briefing about the whole suicide thing. We were watching, Chief Wright's video and all that, and they were saying, "Oh, we're not doing this just to check off the box." And in my opinion, they are. As someone who's been on both sides of the suicide spectrum, I've dealt with it myself. I've helped people who have dealt with it. It is checking a box, because this was never a thing before all the suicides started happening. It's just a reaction. It's just, oh, hey, now we should do this to cover our asses, so that way when somebody else does it, they can say, oh, well, we did this, so it's not our fault, it's on them. I think if they really want to start a discussion, you should have small group discussions within your flight, within your section, within your shop. That's where it starts, not watching a video.
Well, what they need to do...
No, go ahead.
What they need to do is let everyone kind of just vent out the frustration that they have. So when you're upset or you're mad at your command, you're not allowed to go up there and literally cuss them out or be angry with them. You have to go to mental health. You got to go to your psychologist and say, I'm getting aggravated because of this. What I think people should do is at work in their flight or in command, the commander and the first sergeant or whoever sit down in a room with their airmen and their primary people working line, working crews, and they need to say, why are you angry? And then it's a rank off decision. There's no, you'll respect me because of this. It's no, if I want to tear into you, I will, because it's the words need to be said. And
no,
yeah, it might suck.
I completely agree. Yeah, I had the same idea. I was talking to a coworker about this. I think that's exactly how it should be. Because if I try and say anything to my supervisor when I get frustrated, it's just attitude, and then I'll get an LOC. It's not, hey, this is how I genuinely feel. What the hell's going on? Like, help. It's looked at as attitude and, disrespect when I'm just trying to tell you my opinions.
Right.
And how I feel. Don't harp on this whole, like, oh, or the door's always open. Your supervisor's there for you. When you try and go to them, and then you're like, oh, that's attitude. Oh, you need to respect me. And here's an LOC for not doing so, in their opinion.
Yeah. And again, that's my issue. That's why I try to be a very rank off person. Like, I don't demand respect or anyone respect me. I would rather people respect me purely because either how efficient I am at work or because of my personality. I have been told by a lot of people that they don't like me because of my personality. The fact that I'm very abrasive, I'm very loud, and I'm very tactically focused. I care a lot about the job.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I've had the same thing told to me, because that's exactly how I am at work. So sorry, I just think that's funny, because I'm the same way. I've had the same issue. But anyways, continue.
And that's the thing. It's just a lot of people like it and a lot of people don't. Some people are like, calm down. It isn't that serious. It's just a job. I'm like, no, it is. You just don't care. No,
yeah. So I have the same issue. So I've unfortunately had some paperwork in my PIF. And I get very emotional. To me, the Air Force is not just a job. I'm not just going to do this for 4-6 years, get out, go on with my life. This is something I'm going to commit to. I want to do it for the rest of my life. I have big plans for what I want to do. And so to me, I'll get an LOC and I'll get very upset about it. And people are like, oh, it's just an LOC. It doesn't matter. To you, maybe. To the person who's getting out in 2 months, maybe not. But to me, it really hits home, because this isn't just a job for me. This is a life. This is, something I plan to do, all through high school. This is all. The Air Force is all I have. I don't have parents to fall back. I don't have, whatever else to fall back on. So I'm going to take it a bit more seriously than some other people who just don't care. And I don't think that should be an issue. If you don't, why? The other problem I have with the Air Force, in my experience, is that they promote mediocrity more than anything.
Oh yeah,
more than anything, and it really, I'm gonna get heated. It really irritates me, because I don't, as a person who I kind of feel like I'm an overachiever, because to me, if I do something, I want to do something 100%, 100%.
I'm the same
try
way.
to be the best I can be in what I do, regardless if that is attainable or not. I'm sure as hell gonna try my hardest.
Well,
I just don't understand. I don't understand how they could promote mediocrity.
Well, it's really bad when people get awards or people get recognition for doing the bare damn minimum. It's, it amazes me. Like, when I joined and I was working on all these different things and I was learning all this material and everything like that as an A1C, and then as a senior airman, I was doing so much, and they're like, oh, you're already performing at a staff level. I'm like, that's not good. Like,
yeah, no, I agree. I was told the same thing. I was told by one of my old supervisors, you are outperforming everybody in the flight. You should be the senior airman. And I had been an A1C for maybe a year, and I was like, then, like, how is that possible? Like, that's not okay. It should. I saw one of my work packages that I lost, and it's like, oh, acted as NCO. How is it that one of our biggest processes we do that I'm very hands-on with. I came in one day and I asked my supervisor, I said, how is this going? He goes, oh, well, I don't know. The NCOIC said that to me. And I was like, this is the biggest process we do that not only affects us, affects maintenance, affects, ops, affects everybody, right? He said, I don't know. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? How is it that you're sitting here, about to go to NCOA, things like that, and you're supposed to, lead our shop and everything, and you don't even know what is going on. And I understand different rank comes with different responsibilities. However, as an NCOIC, as the leader of the shop, you should know what is going on with our biggest process. And I don't know if that's just my opinion, but I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think the people who get put on pedestal, for example, there's an individual in my shop who has failed a PT test, right? And who is the absolute favorite golden child of the flight. Whereas me, on the other hand, I have never failed a single test the Air Force has given me. I've never failed a dorm inspection. I'm in school. I volunteer. I've straight, not only am I straight A's. I am in 2 private organizations. I lead, things like that. And then yet I'm treated as the black sheep because of my personality, because they see me as the person I was when I first came in, not as the person I am now. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I've seen this throughout multiple airmen. How is it that the overachievers and the people who actually care the most are getting, thrown to the side?
Well, because again, it's all based on the personality, favoritism, and then again, those people that write your packages, right? So it doesn't really matter to a degree how good on paper you are. It depends on how much they like you.
Exactly, and I said that to my supervisor. I told him, that is how the Air Force promotes. It does not matter, because I've said this. I said, I'm not the favorite, so it doesn't matter. And all they do is tell me, they're like, oh, well, just wait till new management. I asked my flight chief. I talked to him about submitting a package for ROTC to commission once, when I get there. He told me I would have a better shot if I cross-trained and had new management, or if I waited for new management.
What?
And I thought, that is exactly what he said to me. And
he means someone else to write the package for you?
No, just because I had new management, because management, does not like me. They see me as a dirtbag airman because of the way I was when I came in at 18 with no prior work experience, with no discipline whatsoever in my life. So yeah, I was very, I had a lot to learn, had a lot to catch up on. I've been to mental health. I feel like I've, matured a lot, things like that, whatever. And he said that to me, and I was like,
going to mental health should never be used against you, though. It should be.
Not going to mental health. Not going to mental health. He wasn't using that against me. He was just saying, he told me that it would be a better idea for me to cross-train and wait for new management. To have, because there's no way, basically told me, there's no way it's going to get accepted. No way I'm going to get, that letter of recommendation from the commander, things like that. And I could not believe it. He's like, well, just keep trying to, keep up with it and keep trying to, basically fix yourself. I can't find the right word. And I was like, I tell him, I've said this, to my supervisor, to my NCOIC, to my flight chief, I am at the end of my rope. I don't know what you people want me to do, because I do everything under the sun to try and get you guys off my back, but yet for some reason I am still looked at as a dirtbag. And to have my dreams shot down in front of me like that, I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it. I said, no matter what I do, you people are never, ever going to see me in a different light.
Well, what I don't understand too is when do you still need to read the Little Brown Book again. Mm-hmm. When you join as an airman and you're an E1 to E3, you are expected to mess up and you are expected to grow with your time in. Because
You would think.
the
So
entire
I was.
point of being in that lower tier is so you can adjust to military life and military
Mhm.
standards. That's
So
the
so
entire point.
I know. So get this. So I was a brand new airman, brand new A1C. I was at I was at my duty station in my old section for 2 or 3 months, and I had already had 2 LOCs, right? So we had our flight commander at the time. He came down. He was talking to all of us airmen and everything. He looked at me, and I had been in for maybe 3 months, and he said that the way I'm going, it's going to be inability to adapt, and I'm going to get kicked out after 2 to 3 months of being in. And I was absolutely nothing had ever crushed my experience in my life more than that. I still hold on to that every single day.
It's too
To
early to
have
judge somebody off that.
It was absolutely ridiculous. And I said, I've been in for less than 5 months. I came in 18, straight out of high school, no job. I never had a job in my life. I never even did chores growing up. I was an only child. I was raised with my grandparents. So I never really had to, they let me play sports. They didn't make me work, things like that. So I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know, you know, I never had like real discipline in my life. So I was trying my hardest to, learn and adjust and adapt. And he said that to me, and I was like, I've been in for maybe 2 months. I'm sorry that I cannot change who I was, who I had been for 18 years in 2 months.
Well, do you know what that sounds like to me?
Hmm.
The generational difference that I mentioned.
Yep. Well, he wasn't that. That's the thing, though. He wasn't that much older. He was mid-20s.
But it doesn't matter because think
Yeah.
of it this way: when the generational difference matters, not so much by age, but by who raised them. Yes, you were raised by your grandparents, but considering how you were raised, of course you weren't going to have the discipline or standards if you didn't even have to do chores in your life.
Mm-hmm. And I
But
told him, and that's what I told him. I said, I'm not trying to do this on purpose. This is just all I know. I didn't know anything else at the time.
because again, what comes with your rank as you currently sit, it's still about still adjusting to military standards. It's not until you're a time in senior airman that you should be well-rounded and well-adjusted, and at that point ready for the supervisory role because you've held it, hopefully, for a certain amount of time.
Well, yeah, and you're supposed to anyways. It says in the little brown book, 36, 26, 18, you're supposed to act as a rank above.
Yes, you are. You are supposed to. And that's the point. What I'm trying to make is just that regardless of whether or not you're supposed to act the rank ahead of you are held to the standards of the rank you hold regardless. So as of your rank, you are still expected to adjust to military standards. So to say it's a failure to adapt after that short amount of time is like when I was a kid being judged on lack of maturity, but I was 5 years old.
Exactly. That's exactly how it made me feel too. And I was besides myself. I had never, I've been through some pretty. I'm not trying to victimize myself, but you kind of know a little bit. The things that I've experienced in my life. So, and I'm telling you that topped it. That really did. That topped, losing my mom, losing my grandma, and some other really terrible things that have happened in my lifetime, and I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. I said, the Air Force to me was supposed to be my savior. So to have, less than 2 months being in, from 2 to 4 months being in, having that said to me, I was terrified. I felt like I still feel that way now. I feel like, I cannot breathe without making a mistake.
It's not supposed to be that way.
No, it's not. And I think that's, and a lot of that drove me to that dark place where, I almost took my own life because of it. Because I felt so suffocated that no matter what I did, I was wrong. No matter what. And that's why I'm fighting so hard to get out of, where I'm at now, because I know it's never going to change. I went to EO recently about it, and they told me that since it was not their definition of harassment or bullying, that they can't do anything for me. And I brought up the whole example about, that individual who failed the people test, who's in better standing than I'm in, and he told me that I was deflecting. The NCOIC of EO told me that I was deflecting and that they couldn't do anything for me. And that's when I really felt like I had nothing left to do. There's nothing I could possibly do at that point.
Well, it's things like this that drive people out. It's the people who don't become immediate superstars or fast burners, right? That get I hate to say the way that I do, but I mean, essentially, like, I made staff in 3.5 years. I made BTZ, And I'm in
Mm-hmm.
good standing with a lot of people, and I would have to say I don't really know why, because I mean I made a lot of enemies, but people look at me and I'm well liked to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
However, people who like you, who have this mentality, who have had this type of thing happen to them, is what drives them away because so early on in their career they're told that they're worthless
Mm-hmm.
or they don't
Eh,
really have a place. And that's the
mm-hmm.
problem. Is just that you're having people who haven't had the time to adjust because honestly, people would argue that I may be a staff. People would argue for me that I've only been in for 3.5 years that I'm still adjusting, and
Mm-hmm.
that's true. I am. You know what I mean? Like until you've been in for at least 6 or 7 years, I don't think you truly understand anything yet. So
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, I'm admitting I'm still learning stuff. So with that, when you think of it that way, yeah, no, judging you after you've been in for anywhere between 2 to 4 months is absolutely absurd. And whoever said that to you as an NCO is an absolute
No,
failure.
he was our flight commander. He was our first
Then
lieutenant who
he's an
said that to
absolute
me.
failure. Oh, he's okay. Then his opinion shouldn't matter at all because a he's a lieutenant, and we all know about lieutenants, so that doesn't really
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but still, as a brand new airman, that to me, having an officer say that to me was like earth shattering, and I still feel that way every single day. And I walk in and I know I'm a very capable and intelligent individual. Yet when I make a logical decision, you know, I get in trouble for it. When, other people have done the same thing and they haven't gotten in trouble for it. So at this point, I feel like absolutely no matter what I do, it's never going to be enough. And I told this to my leadership and they told me, oh, just wait for new management. Just wait.
Yeah,
And I told them, I said, but my problem is with that is like, how much paperwork am I going to get in that time frame? How many, at one point is enough?
not even that, but what they're failing to tell you is this: all the paperwork and whatnot they're setting you up for is going to get seen by your next leadership, so they're going to already have an opinion on you
Exactly.
based on what they.
That is, yeah, that's exactly what I told them. I said, it doesn't matter. Like, because they're going to take a look at my PIF and they're going to write me off as that dirtbag airman already.
Well,
Or they're going to take those opinions. They're going to take those opinions from my own management and be like, oh, well, they're, and it's never going to end. And that's why, I'm terrified. And all I want to do is, try and PCS and try and start fresh. And I know management still talks to management, but it's a little bit different. You still have an opportunity
yeah,
to kind of redeem yourself, you
Yeah.
know, and it's terrible. I hate feeling that way because, I have my difference with the Air Force. Don't get me wrong, but it is something that I want to do for the rest of my life. I plan on being a colonel someday, but it's very difficult to see the future, and it's very difficult to keep trying when no matter what you're going to do in this current situation, nothing good is ever going to happen.
and this is a perfect example for everyone listening of the Air Force failing your airmen, and it's these kinds of things, and that's why you're here, that bring up these suicide problems. It's just that it's almost insulting that when you have someone like her who has been failed to this extent, and then they have these morale days where it's like, oh yeah, we care, come talk to us. It's like, no, you clearly don't. And to lie and hide behind this email that says, oh yeah, we care, come talk to us, and come wake up at 4 in the morning for this morale day run when you worked nights and you got off crew 4 hours ago. It's like, no, I know you're lying to me. It's like if you're gonna fuck me, at least buy me dinner first.
Yeah, so it's like I don't even want to go to my promotion ceremony when I put on some. Because the way I say it, they're all going to be clapping and cheering, and I'll be like, why? You didn't get me here. I got here.
And not even that, but it's like those people
It's
are
fake.
few.
It's fake. They don't care. They don't want to see me succeed, and I know that in my heart. And it's so fucking discouraging sometimes when I just sit there and I think about it, and I coming from someone who I consider myself to be an overachiever. I try very hard. I've had everybody, when I go brief maintenance leadership, these are, the wing commanders, base, or squadron commanders. I have everybody over there telling me how great I am, how I brief better than this, and that, and that's all I have, because they've said that. I have had a lieutenant colonel, a maintenance, one of the maintenance squadron commanders, say that to my NCOIC, and nothing has changed. Nothing has changed on the way that they look at me, and it blows my mind. And I do absolutely everything. I school, private organizations, volunteering, professional development courses, leading, all this. And yet, I am still the dirtbag because of my personality, because of how I was when I was 18 years old. And it's really like, sometimes it gets to be a little bit too much. And they wonder why I'm emotional. Like, I don't know. It's gotten pretty bad.
Again, a perfect example of leadership failing its people. And that's the other thing, too, is just that I hate motorcycles so much. Unfortunately, and you know this, the reality comes the fact that the people who don't like you, the people who do like you, are the ones who can't really influence your career.
Yep. 100%. It's 100% true, because the friends that I do don't have enough rank. Yeah, they may be a staff sergeant, but still they don't have enough pull to do anything for me.
A staff sergeant's AoE is purely affected by their troops and maybe the position they hold, but that's only on an operational level.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, as far as like career influencing, besides being a frontline supervisor that writes EPRs, you don't really have too much in that way.
Exactly. And it's really, I don't know, it's really difficult sometimes, because I'll never allow myself to not care because I'm too stubborn. But it's just really discouraging to know that, and they'll say it, they're like, oh, no, you're doing great. I'm like, then why do you babysit me? If you're sitting here telling me I can run the shop on my own, why am I still being babysat? Why am I getting in trouble for making decisions? And that's what I don't understand. I don't understand why they, and it's the same thing. It goes back to just promoting mediocrity. I don't get it. They hold these airmen up who do nothing, who get airmen of the quarter, who get firewall fives when they do absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. What does that tell me as a person who does everything?
Or even just someone who cares.
Exactly. That none of it matters. Because I don't have the personality that they like or that they want. So that means nothing I do matters.
It's incredibly discouraging to hear this, honestly, because as someone who, granted, I definitely know that I worked for what I have. I know that. However, I have clearly seen people who have a lot that did not work for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen, as a result of that, people who've gotten out as a result of those other people getting promoted for purely mediocrity.
Yep.
Like,
I think it's disgusting.
When I first got to my base, and I told my roommate, like, yeah, I'm shooting for BTZ. He's like, don't get your hopes up too much. I've seen absolute dirtbags win it over stellar people just because, they're best friends with the flight chief. I'm like, oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm. I can't get PTZ because of paperwork that's been in my PIF over a year. Even though I outperform everybody in the flight. It doesn't matter.
I want to touch on something that Mark just said in the chat. He said, and I'm going to quote him here, luckily my boy is close enough to California, Nellis Air Force Base, to come home when he gets depressed by things in the Air Force. There's no way I'll let him get down too much. That's my job. And one, that's a good thing. I'm not discrediting that at all. But one thing that I want to bring up is that a lot of people don't have a support system like that. So my family is all the way back in New York, and I love them, but they don't understand my life. And it's absolutely true, even if they're not willing to accept that they don't. So it's hard for some people who haven't lived alone prior, like me. That's kind of one of the reasons why I got Shadow, because I'm not very good at living on my own. And some people are just so used to having a support system or someone they can bug or someone to always be around that when they don't have that, they crumble. And it goes into that suicide thing, right? The transition between being a civilian and an airman now is huge purely because of the responsibility, like I mentioned before. When you join in after tech school, you have CDCs, you have on-the-job training, you have to do your freaking initial feedback form, you have other on-the-job training classes you got to do. You're also expected to do your PT tests, all this other kind of crap. For someone who's fresh out of high school, you're just like, oh my god.
It scared, as a person who came in straight out of high school. I think I was in the recruiter's office 2 weeks after graduation. I was gone 2 months later. I had just turned 18, first time living on my own, first time being away from my family, and to have not only all that, but to be in a very toxic place it really, like, it brought me to my knees. It really did. I cannot tell you how many hours I spent laying on my bathroom floor crying my eyes out because I didn't think I was going to make it. Because I said, there's no way. There is absolutely no way I'm going to be able to do this. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. To have nobody there that I felt, because I felt completely alone. Completely alone. And it was absolutely terrifying. And, thankfully, I am where I am now. I can't say nothing's really gotten that much better, but still, it got so bad to the point that I thought that I was an absolute failure. I had anxiety every single time I walked to that building and to work every morning. I dreaded it. So I thought, what am I going to get in trouble for today? They made me feel, they still do, that my personality, who I am at my core, is wrong. And it's not accepted. And it's not right. And that really does a lot of damage to a young person mentally.
Because again, one of the things that the Air Force, this is the reason why that's a problem. One of the things, and this, the Air Force tries to promote is its diversity factor. That's not even so much in culture, that's also supposed to be in personality. One of the things that supervision and leadership is supposed to do is embrace everybody that they have and utilize their personalities to the best extent possible. Not pick the ones they like and discredit the ones that they don't.
And that's exactly the situation I've been in for over a year now. And that's why, I got so fed up. I went to EO, and he was like, oh, have you talked to anybody about it? I said, of course I have. I've talked to absolutely everybody in my chain of command except for my flight commander and then obviously, the squadron commander and all that. And absolutely nothing has changed. I have worked my ass off to try and change myself to be the person the Air Force wants me to be. That sometimes I don't even know who I am. And it really really messes with your head. It really, like I said, being a person who has experienced the kind of things I've experienced, like losing my mom in a very traumatic way.
I feel
and then
that.
Some really terrible, terrible things that happened to me in high school and with, my first relationship and everything. I have never, ever in my life felt worse than I do now. Than I do when I go to work. It's gotten to a point where I want to not care, but I physically.
But
I
your
can't
personality is
not
not going to allow for that.
I can't. Like, I will not allow myself to stop caring. I can't just be mediocre. I cannot do it. I won't allow myself to. But sometimes I really wish I could be, because the way I look at it, I was like, you know what? Well, maybe if I fail my dorm inspection, then they'll send me to Spain. Then I'll get those cool deployments. Then I'll get to do this. Then I'll get an award if I don't do anything at all.
But of course, that's not how it's going to work for you because
no, not at all. As soon as I stop, they're going to be like, "Oh, well, why aren't you doing all this?" And so I'm so stuck in this constant mental battle of who I am, who they want me to be, and trying to find that balance to where I keep myself sane. And I don't completely. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm perfect by any means. I have a lot of flaws. I have a lot of things I can work on. But I don't feel like who I am at my core is essentially wrong.
Well, no, it's not. And that's the problem. It's just that, as I said, what leadership is supposed to do is meld everyone's personalities and get the best result out of them and try to understand them. You're supposed to try and understand your people. You're not supposed to judge them purely. And this is the thing. This goes back to the whole supervisor thing that I talked about, right? I told my troops, I want to know who you are. I want to know what makes you happy. I want to know what makes you sad. I want to know what makes you pissed off. I want to know these things because, again, if I want to get the best kind of work out of you, I need to know what makes you who you are. Because if I don't understand what makes you tick, what makes you sad, what makes you happy, then I can't utilize you the best way possible. And if I can't help you, or you don't trust me to help you, then we're already failing. So that's what I tell people. It's just that, and I got this advice from a colonel that came in during my ALS class, and he's like, in my honest opinion, this was a group or wing commander coming and talk to us who's been in a lot of different command positions. And you know what he said? He's like, to me, the frontline supervisor, being a staff sergeant, is the most important job in the Air Force.
Well, yeah, that's what General Miller said when she came to our base and she was talking to us. She said, that's how young airmen see the Air Force.
Because your supervisor is your first impression in the Air Force, right? And that's the thing. It's just that and that's what I told people. He said you need to know the name of their dog, for God's sakes. Like, you need to know what makes them who they are. He said you can't just be a name on a paper. You can't just be, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's hard to really put this in the best words possible without getting too personal about it, because I try not to. But my point is just that a lot of airmen or a lot of staff sergeants get too either obsessed with their rank or take the AFI too literally and don't try to be personable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I've broken ranks with my supervisors before. One of the things, as an example, I've been at his house drinking beer before. Guess what? According to AFI, you're not supposed to do that. However, we did it. And guess what? He was the best supervisor I've ever had. Shocker, right? Like, the point is just that if you really want to try to understand your people, you got to invest time into them. If you just treat them like assets or resources, then that is where you're failing, because they're not. They are people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the mentality that I have. It's just that if you just treat people like names on a roster, if you treat people like resources to utilize, if you treat people purely like technicians with no feelings, then you're already failing.
Mm-hmm.
And to go off the comment that Mark said, as much as people have told me I could be a psychologist, I don't feel mentally capable to do that for other people because of the own mental battles that I put myself in. Maybe it's the impression that I get psychologists are just mentally sound and don't have problems, but I just don't feel confident in myself to handle my personal problems, and so I shouldn't be advising somebody else. But
yeah,
appreciate the compliment regardless. I really do. No sarcasm. I genuinely appreciate that. However, that's my personal thing. And granted, like I said, I haven't been a staff very long, so I know it kind of sounds like I'm talking, out of my ass here. But I guess my mentality is just different, because, and yours will be too when you put on staff, that you will have a very different way of leading your people because you've been through the things you've been through. And
I completely agree. And I've learned more on how not to be a supervisor than I have on how to be a supervisor.
Right, exactly.
From the leadership I've had, I trust absolutely nobody in my leadership chain. Absolutely nobody. It's gotten to the point where the only people I feel like I can talk to is a different squadron's chief. He's one of the people that I brief. I've had a few conversations. I should not feel more comfortable with them than I do with my own leadership, with my own supervisor.
No.
In my opinion.
No, that is an absolute failure.
Yeah. And I am, I've told them time and time again, like, I am at my wit's end because I don't know what else to possibly do.
Well, that's the other thing too, is just that a lot of them don't want to be personable with their people because, again, because of the fact that they think, or they do, deal with so much that, when it comes time to step up to the plate and be a supervisor, a lot of them just don't want to do it. Remember, I saw a post on Facebook. It was like an airman texted a supervisor and said, "Hey, I've been having some suicidal ideations. I'm going to go check myself into the hospital." And he texts him back, "Copy that."
Oh yeah, no, I saw that same one.
Yeah, and I don't know if I should have been, but I was so goddamn angry reading that. Because I'm like, are you genuinely serious? If that was me, I'd be calling and being like, "Hey, what's going on? Where are you going? Do you need my help? Is there anything I can do? Do you trust me to help you?" Like, I'd be freaking out if someone texted me, and one of my troops was texting me that. Like, what can I do? Where are you at? Do you need something? Can I drive? What do you need? But the fact that he's just like, okay, and then probably went back to bed, it's like, how? How can you care so little?
Mm-hmm. It really kind of blows my mind.
Oh, it absolutely blows my mind.
They wonder why their suicide rate is at 79 already.
And that we're more than halfway through the year, but we've already passed last year's final statistics.
No, not at all. It's gonna rise significantly. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Shadow was playing with something and it was making a lot of noise. I'm like, oh no, what is she doing now?
It's okay, Saturn's being a little spiteful right now.
Yeah, I guess that an idea I had that I think would be really good, and this would benefit a lot to the load if we had the people for it, was splitting from E5 and up. You can make a choice on what kind of NCO you want to be. So my initial idea is to have two different career paths. You have purely admin, people who do purely leadership duties, who do nothing ops related, and then your pure technicians, people who only do ops, and people who are the frontline supervisors, and that's it. Like that's their pure. They do no other admin besides frontline supervising because they're ops, right? So, that's my idea. And if you alleviate that workload on those people, they'd have more time and more people and more things to invest in their people. And that's one thing I think would be really beneficial if we could manage that. Unfortunately, we don't have the people for that. But that is one thing that I think would be very good. Is just giving people a choice of what kind of career path they want to go down, and then if they like it more, and they get different shreds, then you could potentially have people who care more because they're where they want to be.
Yeah. Ow! 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 Sorry, Sarah was clawing me. What?
That's her
There's
cat.
a girl. Oh, jeez. Ow. She, rolled on top of me and started, digging into my thigh. God, I love you so much. You're lucky. You're so cute. Anyways. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think some supervisors should be just in a personal role, whereas some should, be purely admin or purely, whatever. I don't know. I just think they say, we want to start the conversation. We want to get out of here. Do not chew those. They say they want to start the conversation, but then they have a 15-minute brief and think that's going to help.
Well, the thing is, you'd think that by now people would realize that PowerPoints don't do anything.
Yeah, you would think. You would. But then again, common sense isn't something I have found to be very plentiful in the Air Force.
No, not really. I don't really think they benefit anybody like PowerPoints, especially in stuff like that.
Yeah, so you've basically reduced my feelings to a bullet on a slide.
Essentially, yeah, and that's why people don't like it. And that's why I'm not saying people don't care, but people see how the Air Force treats it, and then they replicate that attitude with the people beneath them.
I was pissed. I was sitting in that briefing, and I was absolutely pissed because, as someone who was almost one of those 78 or 79 as it is now, I couldn't believe it. You're comparing me taking my life to,
Statistics.
a few words.
Yep.
On a slide that don't mean anything.
And what we want to make clear to everybody is just that this isn't us dissing the Air Force, like the Air Force
Not at all.
itself.
I love the Air Force. I appreciate every single opportunity the Air Force has ever given me.
But there is no doubt that there isn't problems. And and this is what we're not necessarily trying to fix, but things that we just want to say. So, we have complained, but a lot today in the last 17 minutes. But now, if you have any, it's time to offer solutions.
Ooh, that's a tough thing.
And this is the thing, it's just that it's, as someone who've noticed, it's easy to complain, it's hard to fix. So, if you could implement something, what would you do?
For me, because I haven't thought too extensively about this.
Please mute that.
Sorry. I just heard. Anyways, so I think, every shop and their leadership should have a tops off talk. Everyone should be able to express every ounce of their feelings and not be reprimanded for it. I think that's where it starts. I think that's what's going to get the conversation going. Not having a briefing about it.
Like what we said earlier.
Yeah, letting people express how they feel without fear of reprimand, I think will alleviate a lot of stress and hopefully bring it to leadership's eyes more clearly and more real. Because it's different hearing it, like I said on the slide, versus it coming from the mouth of the individual in front of you.
Right, and that's the thing. It's just that, you've had those times where you want to talk to someone about that. It's like, then you hear, I'm a staff, master, tech, whatever. It's like, no, you can't talk to me like that. It's like, then how do you expect people to talk to you about their issues?
Yeah, don't tell me your door's open if you're going to throw your rank in my face afterwards.
Right. And the good thing that I've seen is just that, when it came to people, having families and things like that, the whole, if the Army or the military wanted you to have a wife, they would have issued you one.
Yeah.
I remember I was sitting in on a briefing with my leadership, and they said that's not a thing anymore. We don't treat people like that. If you People have families, people have lives outside of this, and you need to understand that. Don't be impersonable and try to hold them accountable for having families and children. Like, this isn't the 1960s.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I think it's a very, very difficult thing to navigate because it's not just a problem that can be solved by a problem.
It all goes back to just somehow, not somehow, but just trying to invest in people and give them a reason to care. And I think you would do.
Don't reduce a person's being to a few.
Right. Don't reduce them to just bullets, and then try to find a way to incorporate more camaraderie. If you give people more of a team fight mentality, then they genuinely will care more. But as of right now, I'm not saying there's little of that, but as someone who is stationed with Marines, there is a massive difference between how we act and how they act. Like 100%. There is it's amazing to me how very different the way they act as brothers and how they do everything together. In the Air Force, it's like, oh, the day's over. I'm going home. Leave me alone. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's just different. And granted, the Air Force, being the kind of branch that they are, invites a different kind of mentality, of course. However, you need to incorporate it somehow, some way.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's a very scary thing.
Oh, it is.
It's happening.
Because
I think it's absolutely terrifying.
The problem is this: is just that ultimately your career, from the start of it, at the worst possible time, is always in the hands of somebody else.
Yep.
So, while your actions do matter, if you get someone who just doesn't like you, you're screwed.
Oh yeah, that's how I've been for the entire start of my career.
Right. So that's my point. It's just that your career at the worst possible time is always in somebody else's hands. And that's never acceptable.
Completely agree. I completely agree.
Well, this is actually going on a lot long, not a lot longer, but the entire topic, like, it went by fast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think we covered pretty much most of it. Saturn. I think we covered the main points.
And this isn't, for anyone who is listening, this isn't to try and discourage anyone from joining the Air Force. I still think service is a great thing for everybody, and that obviously not every branch operates this way. It's just that the fact of the matter is just that when you're told how everything is supposed to function and then you actually get that reality check, it's discouraging.
Incredibly.
Yeah.
I will, as many problems and many disagreements I have with the Air Force, I owe my life to it. Because it got me out of a very bad situation. It saved my life in a lot of ways, and it also ended it in ways.
Well, I think one thing people forget too, and this is the good things about it, like you said, and what the way I look at it too, is that the Air Force has given me a lot in comparison to what I used to have. Like before I enlisted, I lived with my grandmother working at McDonald's, right? Mm-hmm. And then now I live on my own. I have a decent car. I have my own place. I have.
No, I was the same way. I was 18 years old, had nothing. No college education, no real money to fall back on. Nothing. And now I have a car and a phone. I can pay my own bills. I don't have to rely on anybody else. I don't have to rely on my grandfather to support me. I can support myself. And it's given me the opportunity for education, and that is huge to me. And like I said, as many problems as I have with the Air Force, I really do genuinely appreciate every opportunity it's given me. It got me out of a very bad situation. Granted, it did put me in kind of a bad one too, but it's different. It got me out of a situation that was pretty bad. It's given me education, an opportunity to mature, to learn how to be an adult, to learn how to be on my own, and to be independent, function for myself, care of myself, for the long. So that's something I do greatly appreciate.
Right, and that's the thing. I think if people looked at what they get out of it more than what they lack, people are like, well, I don't get this, or I wanted this, and the Air Force said no, and blah blah blah. And it's like, I wanted this, but I didn't get it. it's an entitlement mentality. So people are always looking at everything like, oh, I deserve this, but I didn't get it, so I hate the Air Force. And as a result of my pessimistic attitude, I'm going to treat everyone else like crap because I feel like I got screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. It's just that maybe it's just because I have low standards, but it's like, again, I live on my own. I have a cat who's clawing my couch.
I know, mine's doing that right now.
Hey, get out.
Baby, stop. I love you so much, but please stop. Oh, you're the love of my life. You're alive, but you can't do that. You can't do that, baby girl.
Joking aside, it's like,
yeah,
you get to live decently, and as long as you live within your means, and that's another problem people mess up all the time.
Oh yeah.
People
I love seeing these A1Cs 2018 Camaros.
Oh my god, it reminds me of like I drive on base, and there's just one airman who works the gate, and he makes it a point to keep his Mercedes car key on his belt so everyone sees it. And I'm like, dude, I know you can't afford it. I know your mom's paying for it. Just stop it.
Chill out there for a minute, my dude.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, don't do it. But I mean, again, it affords you a lot of benefits that ultimately, if I wasn't in the Air Force, I wouldn't have.
Oh, same. 100%.
Like, I would not be living on my own if I went to college. I'd still probably be living with family.
Oh, same way. Even if I somehow, I know I can be mature enough to really buckle down and focus on my education. I am very, very, very grateful to the Air Force for giving me the opportunity to have different, be individual, be an actual.
It's a good starting point for a lot of people, and that's why I recommend it. Because you learn a lot of life skills.
Oh, 100%. As bad as the situations as I've been in, it has taught me a lot. And it's, helped me mature a lot. Which I wouldn't have if I just, went to college with my best friend, and partied. I mean, not.
One second.
Know what I mean. Yeah.
I'll be right back. Shadow's messing up. Just keep going.
Oh, I don't know what to talk about. Well, hello, everybody. I don't know if there's... Hope you guys are enjoying this. First time I've ever done this. I hope I'm halfway entertaining you guys. You guys are having
I keep my OCP top hung up outside so I can grab it on my way out, and she's trying to knock it off my hanger.
Stop. Get out of here.
But I think that's about everything we're going to cover today. We've been going for a while. Been going for an hour 20. That's pretty good, honestly.
Yeah.
Especially when we only really had one topic. So we appreciate you guys coming out. I know it's been a while since I've streamed one of these. It's definitely been a minute. But we appreciate you guys listening and talking to us, giving us feedback. We were worried that no one was going to show up for this one because it's been so long. So I'm happy with the turnout, genuinely. I appreciate you guys coming, and is there anything else you want to say?
No, just thank you for having me. I think it was a lot of fun. I hope I get to do it again. Sorry if I'm too entertaining there for all you guests, but I do appreciate you guys listening to me.
They're like me. They're like me, They enjoy it.
Okay, well, I feel... Stop chewing that!
But thank you guys for tuning in to the 14th episode of Screaming Into the Void, and I will see you guys hopefully next Saturday. And if not, I'll let you guys know.
For sure.
That is all I got. Bye.
Bye.